Today is my 80th birthday, whispered Eleanor Grant, staring at the single candle on a chocolate cake she couldn't bring herself to touch. The quiet cafe around her hummed softly, steaming milk. Clinking cups, but she didn't hear it. Her hands trembled, tears sliding down wrinkled cheeks. No family. No friends. Just another year of surviving when she was too tired to keep doing it. She didn't notice the cafe door open until a man and a young boy stepped in, shaking rain from their jackets. Jack Miller had taken yet another morning off work, desperate to reach the son he no longer recognized. Ben, 8 years old, trailed behind him, silent as a shadow. Since Jack's wife Emily had died in the crash 14 months ago, Ben had barely spoken. Therapists called it selective mutism from trauma. Jack called it heartbreak. Pancakes today, buddy? Jack asked, forcing cheer. Or muffins? Ben just shrugged. 10 words all week. Maybe 11. They found a corner table, or tried to. Ben froze halfway there, eyes fixed on something across the cafe. Jack followed his gaze and saw the woman in the wheelchair. Silver hair neatly pinned, posture folded in on itself, a small chocolate cake before her. The flame on the candle wavered. Eleanor's lips moved soundlessly. And then Ben began to walk toward her. Ben, wait, Jack called, but his son didn't stop. He reached the table, looked at the candle, and, in the softest, almost trembling voice, began to sing. Happy birthday to you. Jack froze. His son's voice, the voice he hadn't heard in months, floated through the cafe. Every conversation stopped. Even the barista's hands stilled mid-pour. Happy birthday, dear, Ben hesitated. The old woman's eyes lifted, startled. Eleanor. She whispered. Happy birthday, dear Eleanor. Happy birthday to you. By the time he finished, both she and Jack were crying. Ben looked at her solemnly. Now you make a wish, he said. But it has to be a real wish, not a sad one. Eleanor blinked. What's a real wish? A wish for something new, Ben said simply. Not for something that's gone. I tried those. They don't work. Her chest ached. What if I don't have any new wishes? Then you can share mine, Ben said. I wish for a grandma. Jack stepped forward, embarrassed and moved. Ben, he didn't mean. But. Eleanor smiled through her tears. I think that's the best wish I've ever heard. Ben's voice softened. My mom's in heaven. Dad says she's watching, but she can't hug me anymore. Do you have someone there? My daughter, Eleanor whispered. 2 years ago. Then they're probably friends, Ben said, matter of fact. Mom liked helping people. She was a nurse. Eleanor's mouth trembled. My daughter was a teacher. Ben's eyes widened. Then maybe she's teaching the kids in heaven. He looked at his father. Can we sit with her? Just for cake. It's her birthday. Jack hesitated. But Eleanor nodded. Please. Sit. Ben talked more in the next hour than he had in an entire year, about school, his goldfish, and the model airplane he and his dad were building. Eleanor listened. Laughing softly, her sadness slowly melting into something warmer. When Ben spoke about his mother's accident, Eleanor held his hand. Sometimes life is just cruel, she said quietly. But it doesn't mean we stop living. Jack saw something shift in both of them, a spark that had been missing for so long. Where do you live, Miss Eleanor? Ben asked suddenly. About 10 minutes from here, she said. A house that's far too big for one person. We live in an apartment that's too small, Ben replied earnestly. Maybe you need someone to fill up your big house. Jack opened his mouth to protest, but Eleanor looked thoughtful. Would you like to see it? That afternoon, they followed her wheelchair-accessible van to a sunny yellow house on Maple Drive. The place was spotless, but hollow, the kind of clean that comes from loneliness, not pride. This was my daughter's room, Eleanor said, showing them a floral bedroom frozen in time. I haven't changed a thing. Ben peeked into the next room. This could be my room. I can see the bird feeder from here. Jack started to speak, but Eleanor interrupted gently. How much do you pay? In rent? When he told her, she shook her head. Half that. The house is paid for. I just need it to feel alive again. That's not enough, Jack protested. Then cook dinner a few nights a week. Help me with the computer. Let Ben keep talking to me like I matter. Her eyes shone. That would be enough. Ben looked at his father hopefully. Can we, Dad? And in that moment, Jack knew they would. They moved in 3 weeks later. The first night, they ate spaghetti at Eleanor's long-forgotten dining table. Ben laughed. Eleanor teased Jack about overcooking the noodles. For the first time in years, the house felt like home. That night on the porch, Jack told her quietly, "You saved my son." Eleanor smiled faintly. He saved me first. Months passed. Routine blossomed like spring. Ben had breakfast with Eleanor every morning, learning bird names as they watched the feeder, cardinals, jays, doves. She told him that silly names made the world more interesting. In the afternoons, Ben did homework while she read nearby. On weekends, Jack taught her to use a laptop. Slowly, laughter filled the house again. When Ben's teacher called to ask who Grandma Eleanor was, Jack invited her to dinner. She left in tears of understanding. Families, she realized, weren't just born. Sometimes, they were chosen. A year later, Jack reluctantly joined a grief support group. That's where he met Hannah Ross, a pediatric nurse who'd lost her fiancé in a climbing accident. She was kind, grounded, the kind of person who could listen without trying to fix you. They started with coffee, then dinner, then weekends spent talking about everything they thought they'd never feel again. When Ben heard her name, he asked, "Can Miss Hannah come for dinner?" Eleanor's eyes twinkled. Anyone who makes your dad smile like that should. At dinner, Hannah brought flowers for Eleanor and a puzzle for Ben. Within an hour, she fit right in. She doesn't try to be mom, Ben whispered to Eleanor later. She's just herself. Like how you're happy with us but still miss your daughter. Eleanor squeezed his hand. Exactly. 2 years after that birthday in the cafe, Jack proposed to Hannah in the backyard garden he and Ben had built under Eleanor's watch. Eleanor cried as she watched from her wheelchair. "You're getting a mom," she called. "I know," Ben said, hugging Hannah. "But I'm not losing one. Mom's still watching, probably happy Dad found someone good. And you're not losing your daughter either, Grandma. We're just adding." Eleanor laughed through her tears. Smart boy. At the wedding, she gave a speech that left every eye wet. 3 years ago, she began, I sat in a cafe with a cake and one candle, ready to give up. Then a little boy sang me happy birthday and told me to make a real wish, not for something lost, but for something new. That boy and his father became my family. They gave me back my life. She looked at Ben. You taught me that new wishes are sometimes the ones that save us. And to Hannah, she added softly, you taught me that love isn't about replacing, it's about expanding. 5 years later, Eleanor turned 85. The house that once echoed with silence was now alive with laughter, Ben, tall and lanky, helping Hannah in the kitchen. Jack stringing decorations, baby Mara Hope, named after Eleanor's daughter, banging a spoon on her highchair. When the cake came out, Ben grinned. "Make a wish, Grandma Ellie." Eleanor looked around, at the man who'd become her son, the woman who'd become her daughter, the boy who'd saved her, and the baby who carried a name reborn. "I don't need wishes anymore," she said, blowing out the candle. "I have everything." 7 years later, Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep. At her funeral, Ben, now a young man, spoke clearly, proudly. "She wasn't my grandmother by blood," he said, "but by choice. And that made it even stronger. She taught me that family isn't who you're born with. It's who shows up, stays, and loves you when you need it most." He held up a letter she'd left for him. "My dear Ben, the day you sang to me, you gave me purpose. When you see someone sitting alone with a birthday cake, sing. You never know whose life you'll save. The house is yours now. Fill it with love." Months later, Ben stood outside the same yellow house on Maple Drive. His father carried a box from the truck. "You sure about this?" Jack asked. Ben smiled. "It's what Grandma Ellie wanted, to keep the door open for someone who needs family." Inside, on the porch railing, he noticed faint words carved into the wood. "Love isn't pie. You don't run out, you just make more." He laughed softly, tears in his eyes. That night, sitting on the porch with a mug of cocoa, her cocoa, Ben looked up at the stars. "Thanks, Grandma," he whispered. And maybe, just maybe, in the whisper of the wind, he heard her answer. "You're welcome, sweetheart. Now go live."